I never expected to find anything new at Roanoke. The colony's disappearance had been dissected by historians, archaeologists, and conspiracy theorists for centuries. Theories ranged from starvation to Native American attacks to supernatural forces, but no one ever found real proof. The idea that my team, just another group of forensic archaeologists funded by a university grant, would be the ones to solve the mystery seemed laughable. And yet, standing in that pit, staring at bones that shouldn't exist, I knew we had uncovered something no one was meant to find. Something that had been waiting. We arrived on the island in early spring, setting up camp near the original settlement site. There was an eerie stillness to the place, as if time had forgotten it. The trees loomed taller than they should, their bark twisted, gnarled. Dan, one of my grad students, was the first to say what we were all thinking. This place feels wrong. I rolled my eyes. It's an old island, Dan. It's supposed to feel off. No, I mean, listen. We fell silent. No birds, no wind. Just the distant lapping of water against the shore. We shook it off and got to work. For 2 weeks, the dig was uneventful. Broken pottery, rusted tools, the usual remnants of colonial life. But on the 15th day, we found the grave. It was deeper than expected, hidden beneath the roots of an ancient tree. At first, we thought it was a proper burial site. Then we saw the bones. They weren't just broken, they were hollowed out. The marrow had been removed, the bones gnawed on as if something had fed on them. Not scavengers, not cannibals, something else. That night, as we catalogued our findings, Dan burst into the tent, pale and shaking. "You need to see this," he said. He led us back to the dig site, pointing at the tree above the grave. Its bark was scarred, as if someone had carved into it long ago. The word was faint but unmistakable. Croatoan. A pit formed in my stomach. The same word John White had found when he returned to the vanished colony. No bodies, no signs of struggle, just a single word left behind. That night, I stayed up reading White's old journals. Historians had dismissed his later writings as paranoia, but I wasn't so sure anymore. He wrote of something in the woods, something that took them, piece by piece. The next morning, Dan was gone. His tent was shredded, his belongings scattered. No blood, no tracks, nothing, like he had simply ceased to exist. We searched the entire island, nothing. Then, I found his notebook. His last entry was hastily scrawled, as if he'd written it in terror. "They're still here. We were never meant to find them."
Eleanor Dare watched her husband disappear into the woods. "Ananias!" she called, her voice trembling. But he didn't turn back. He walked stiffly, as though something unseen was pulling him forward. Beside her, Manteo, the Croatian translator, and their only ally, tightened his grip on his spear. His face was carved from stone, unreadable. "He will not return," Manteo said softly. Eleanor turned to him, panic rising. "What are you saying? He just went to look for John Borden. He'll be back." Manteo shook his head. "The woods are hungry. They take what does not belong." The first signs of wrongness had been small. Animals disappeared. The trees rotted from within, their trunks filled with a foul black substance. The air smelled sweet, like decay, masked by perfume. Then came the whispers. At first, they were faint, barely audible beneath the rustling leaves. But soon, they spoke their names, called to them, invited them to step beyond the colony's wooden walls. Then the children began vanishing. No struggle, no footprints, just empty beds and cold sheets. The settlers turned to Manteo for guidance. He warned them of the old ones. "They have always been here," he said. "Older than the trees, older than us. We do not speak their names." Some of the settlers scoffed, but Eleanor saw the fear in his eyes. And then Ananias was taken. That night, the settlers gathered in the center of the colony, clutching torches. "We need to leave," Eleanor pleaded. "Where?" Thomas Stevens shouted. "We cannot sail. We have no supplies." "The Croatian will take us in," she insisted. But before anyone could respond, the torches flickered, and the whispers turned to laughter. A shape moved at the edge of the trees. Then another, tall, too thin. Faces stretched into hollow masks of human features. The first to go was Thomas. Something yanked him into the dark, So fast, his scream barely had time to escape. Panic erupted. People ran, but the things were already among them. Eleanor grabbed her daughter, Virginia, and ran. Behind her, the settlers fell, their bodies folding inward like paper. Some simply ceased to be. Eleanor turned just once. A figure loomed before her, taller than the others, its face void. It leaned close, whispering in a voice that was not meant for human ears. "You called us with your presence. This land was never yours." Eleanor tried to scream, but the darkness took her.